December 22nd, 2018. It's a Saturday, so that means it's time for your All About Your Benjamins weekly mixtape and weekend review video. Thank you for joining me. Merry Christmas in advance if that is your holiday of choice. This will be the second to last mixtape and weekend review before the end of the year. We'll get to squeeze one in next week as well. A lot of headlines to cover, a very newsworthy week. So I want to go through those and also end on a high note, since as I'm sure you're aware, the news this week hasn't been the most optimistic. And I'm an optimistic person, so I don't want to end on a bad note. That being said, let's just dive right in and talk about some of the main things you've heard about and that are impacting the market and your financial plan, maybe or maybe not impacting the plan. The first and the elephant in the room is the market. The market continues to struggle into the end of the year. You know, all of us are hoping for what we call a Santa Claus rally, ending on a high note. Still a few days left in the end of the year, but it's looking less and less likely that that's going to be happening. So in the short term, don't know if it's going to get any better before the end of the year. What are some of the reasons why the markets are struggling? Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, nor does anybody else out there, despite how convincing arguments and stories may be. That being said, there are some headlines that have to be contributing to the market's struggle. First and foremost, the Federal Reserve this week came out, raised rates again, another quarter point, as they indicated all year long, but there's been a lot of conversation as of late as we see global economies slowing down, signs within our economy slowing down, and then also the turbulence in the market. All of these factors working together. Some investors were hoping that the Fed would maybe hold off on raising in the end of the year. Obviously they did not. What the market did not like the most, at least from my perspective, were some of the comments that Chairman Powell came out with afterwards, setting the expectations that there would be, right now, 2 more hikes into next year. So 2019, the expectation is 2 more hikes, down from what was supposed to be 3 from prior commentary. So they listened at some. But the commentary that Chairman Powell used, talking about being data dependent and looking at the numbers and letting that tell them what they're going to be, the market and investors were hoping for him to be more dovish. We've talked about what that term means in the past, and they looked at that as being not quite as soft as they were hoping. So the market's reaction to that was not positive. The concern is raising rates are going to be slowing our growth and hindering the forward moving of the economy. Will it or won't it? I don't know. The Fed's job is to be monitoring that. They have information that you and I are not privy to. I like to trust the officials that are there. I don't think he wants to do a bad job. Now, whether or not he does or does not will remain to be seen. But a lot of narratives coming out about making the bad decision from the Fed. They should have waited. There was no reason to do it. Time will tell us. But that is what's going on right now, and that's one of the reasons the market sold off this week heading into the holidays. Another one is actually it's a couple tied to D.C. A lot of uncertainty going on there. Earlier in the week, General Mattis resigned, effective February. So we have that going on, changes going on amongst the administration and some of the higher up people there. So that's never good to see, at least in my perspective. I'd rather have stability. So we have that resignation. We also have, as of last night at midnight, or I guess this morning, a partial government shutdown over budget, and mainly being attributed to not getting enough money for the border wall that is to be built down south. So we have a major resignation that kind of came out of nowhere as a reaction to troops being pulled out of Syria, is the narrative. I think that may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but nonetheless, that is one thing. We have the partial shutdown of the government as well. So all of this, when you add on the tariff talks, the market already struggling, all of these things just kind of compound together and just don't make it for a very good investing environment right now. Now, what comes up in the new year, nobody knows. And before I get to the last couple of things I want to talk about, I wanted to just come back to these topics, and there are a lot of narratives out there right now about what this means and what it could be, and a lot of it is pessimistic. And I do my job as a financial advisor and other advisors. Part of our job is to keep our clients in the game, keep them focused on the long term, remind them of the plans that we have, and to help them try to tune out this noise, because there are narratives that are designed to help you and help you make good financial decisions, and I would think those are the ones that come from people like myself. Hopefully I'm able to do that. And there are also narratives that are out there that are designed to attract you, pull your eyes in for advertising, for book sales, newsletter sales, and they know, the people that are behind those know that fear sells. So when you can kind of compound on top of this, that's going to draw you in. That's going to be good for ratings. That's going to be good for advertising or the book or the newsletter they're trying to sell. So I would encourage you to think about, as you read these narratives, don't fully dismiss what they might mean and what they're saying, but take a second to think about, why is this headline this way? Is it to help me make a good decision? Is it to help me improve my long-term position? Or is it just to get me to read it or click? And I think if you think about that for a second, that may help you distinguish between what is actually helpful and what is actually just trying to sell you something or trying to pull your eyes in. And then that may help you to determine what is worth listening to and what is worth just kind of tuning out. So I'm not sitting here to say that everything that you're reading now, what we're experiencing in the market in the short term, doesn't mean that more of this is on the way. But it also doesn't mean that there is more. This could just be momentary and could be swinging back up if things kind of settle down and the economy continues to move forward and the Fed doesn't slow things down. So it could be very real. More could be on the way, or this could be it, and we could be off to a good 2019. No one knows. No one knows. So that's the thing. We just can't react to these types of things. So I'm going to reshare a blog post from my friend Brendan Malooly. He was in the mixtape last week about narratives. And I'm also going to put in a blog post that I wrote this week. I try not to be too self-promotional, but it was a blog post about data and why financial advisors use data. You don't have to read the whole thing. There are some charts that I included in there that you may have seen already. You might see again in the future, but I include them in conversations. I include them in the blog post, mainly just to remind people that if you're concerned about the market, I understand why, but here's what investing has looked like over the long term. Situations and times like now are normal. If you go back into time and think about, not even 2008, other times that the markets have gone down, you're hearing very similar narratives that have led many investors to make bad decisions, and had they just stayed the course, they would have been okay. So I'm not here to say that it doesn't suck to see the market doing what it's doing. I would much rather have the market up for the year, but this is a part of investing. You don't get return without taking on some risk, and when taking on risk, that means sometimes we have periods of time like this that aren't fun. So check those out again. Just remind yourself about the narratives that are out there. Why is it being presented this way? Is this here to help you, or is this here to sell you or get you to read their posts? And then remember that this is all a part of investing. It doesn't make it easier while it's going on, but I also don't think that reacting and falling victim to some of these negative narratives is the right approach. My 2 cents. So check those out. So let's go back to the last couple headlines that I have. One, this is maybe a big benefit for people, especially young professionals potentially. Your credit score through Experian is going to begin including cell phone and utility bills. So if you've been paying those bills regularly but don't have a long-term credit history because you're young, you don't have a really good credit score. But now they're going to be factoring in these bills that can help a lot of people's credit score, which could also help people achieve credit a little bit sooner. Could be a double-edged sword. It could give people credit that aren't ready for it because now they have a better credit score. But I think at the end of the day, credit is a stupid thing. I think the credit score is not necessarily reflective of everybody's situation, and the way they factor it is sometimes backwards. But this could be a good thing for a lot of people looking to build their credit score, to be able to buy that next house or build that first business and improve their credit score. So check that out. Another thing, when it comes to investing, we're end of the year, so you're going to have end of the year capital gains distribution. A lot of these have already been paid out, but this could create a little bit of a tax surprise for some individuals out there, and if anything, a frustration. So a capital gains distribution, real quick, mutual funds are pooled investment vehicles. We all share in the gains and losses throughout the year. When other investors are selling, sometimes that forces the fund managers to sell investments inside of the mutual fund that have had a profit or have had a gain. Those have to be distributed by year end to everybody. So we're going to have a situation where a lot of mutual funds this year might be down, and if you have those positioned in a taxable investment account, so not an IRA, not a 401k, not a 529, those distributions are taxed in the year that they're distributed. So you could have a mutual fund that's down, but you could get a 5 or 6% distribution from that fund that's going to result in a taxable event come tax time in the spring. So just throwing that out as a heads up, just to prepare for that. It's part of an investment. I'm sometimes in the camp of, paying taxes on investments is not necessarily a bad thing because it means you've made money, but it is also a frustration from time to time, which also is important when it comes to your financial planning and investment planning, of strategically placing or using certain investment vehicles to try to minimize those distributions if you can and if you need to. So be aware for that. And the final one, ending on a high note, locally here in Fishers in the Hamilton County community, there was a pretty cool story that I'll share the link to of a local church that raised money and worked together with the police department, that when the police department this week was pulling over people for traffic violations, minor violations, turn signals, things of that sort, instead of getting a ticket, they got a $500 check. So it was a pretty cool thing that, you know, it would be a bummer to go into the holiday getting this $200 or $300 ticket, and instead you get a check for $500. Watch the video. All of this stuff that I talked about earlier that's on my board, the Fed, the market, the resignations, the government shutdown, puts it all in perspective that those aren't really that meaningful to the quality of our life. It's cool to see people who need this little boost get it. Also remind some of us who are fortunate enough to not be in that position of struggling to be, you know, count our blessings and be thankful for what we have at this time of year. So check that out. It's a great story. You don't have to be local to appreciate it, but it's kind of a cool thing to see going on. And shout out to the church Northview for doing that in the season. So that's it for this week. Have a Merry Christmas. It's a longer video than longer than normal. I apologize for that, but I wanted to add a little bit of more commentary just to refocus people if need be. So Merry Christmas. We'll see you before the new year. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the blog, to the podcast. Subscribe to the briefings on your Amazon devices. I don't want to say it because it'll turn mine on. So check those all out. Trying to give you as much content as possible to help you navigate these waters and feel comfortable about your situation. And I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So hopefully you're having fun listening as well. So with that, we'll let you get to your weekend, and we'll see you before the new year. Merry Christmas.